question, who is Olly Monga? I like to describe myself as a story of success without supervision. But in terms of attaching what I do, what I have been doing, and maybe what I intend to do, I'm a published author. I'm an accomplished speaker, the 2019 Zambia champion for public speaking in table topics. I'm also a banker. I'm also an advocate of positive thinking, as you already said that. In addition to that, I actually run an institution called the Port Consult, which trains people in public speaking, writing, and communication. And apart from that, I also run an organization called Gobelo Conversations, turning males into men. So in a nutshell, that's what I do, but I describe myself generally as a story of success without supervision. Many people have different stories on how they became what they became or who they became. Mine comes from a point where no one believed I could be anything, including my own mother. And I remember sometime, when you're a kid, you have a dream and you share with your parent and you tell them, I think I'm going to be this one day. And they just tell you that you're just dreaming. And not dreaming in the sense where you have a dream to become something, but they're just telling you, you're dreaming, you have to wake up from this dream because you can never become this. And that could be so crushing, considering the fact that these are the people that you think they would believe you, at least at the bare minimum. A parent should be someone that believes that no matter what, my child would become anything. But I'm coming from a background where my parents didn't believe that I could become anything. And this is something that even with my mother we talk about now. And she tells me how that I didn't look like I was really going anywhere. And anyone who tried to speak positive about me then was looking like they didn't even know or they didn't know how to read trends, because I was quiet and reserved. I didn't have many friends. I was one who seemed like, for me to go anywhere, I needed to change who I was at that particular point. But I used what I was to become what I am through putting together the negativities, the disappointments, the discouragements to become what I have ultimately now become. And because of that, I describe myself in that line, because I have really encouraged myself throughout to become what I have become today. Of course, now I have people that believe me when I say something. It's because they have watched me become a number of things that they thought I wouldn't become. So that's why I describe myself as a story of success without supervision. Well, you would want to know that we are ultimately what we are because of what we think. And rarely we actually think about how true this is, because we don't think that what we think would ultimately be what we become, because we don't maybe pay attention to thoughts. But I'll tell you that thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, and actions lead to results. So if we trace the whole lot of it, it would take us back to the thought. So the reason why I write about thoughts is, of course, I am a born-again believer. And there's one thing that struck me by surprise in the Bible when Jesus was telling the people. He was saying, it has been taught to you that thou shalt not commit adultery. But I tell you the truth, that whosoever looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And for me, that really got me thinking that, is anyone safe? But when I actually started understanding and just reading close to what he was talking about, I actually realized that he was talking about, if you can consistently think about something, you will ultimately begin to feel like it. And when you feel like it, you will definitely be able to act that particular thought. Many of us as youth, we have a tendency to think that those that have gone ahead of us, the leaders in government or our parents, our uncles, they owe us a life so that we should be able to live in a certain way. So if they don't do certain things for us, then we begin to hate them. We begin to resent them. But that is wrong. For me, what keeps me going is no one owes me anything. The people that are ahead of me or that have gone ahead of me, they became what they became. Of course, if they were helped, good. But they did not become what they became because someone was dragging them. They became what they became because they had a desire and they started doing something in that line of that desire. And if there was any help, it found them whilst doing or pursuing their desires. Moreover, The other thing that keeps me going is the fact that times keep changing. And I remember a long time ago we used to tell each other with my friends that if you do not change with change, change will leave you far too behind that you'll be very embarrassed to rise. So what we do now as young people is, okay, when they built the University of Zambia, there were only, for argument's sake, 300 students that graduated and all of them got jobs. That will not be the same reality today, because now on average there are thousands. Then there were hundreds. Now there are thousands. Apart from that, long time ago, if you have a degree, you've made it. But now there are people that have two. Before we talk about masters and PhDs and anything. So if you still continue to think that someone owes you something for you to be able to be at a certain level, then you continue waiting for that particular person to make it happen for you. But as I said earlier, you have to change with change, because times are moving, times are changing, and if you do not change alongside the time, then you've been waiting all the time to, hoping that, okay, maybe when we change government, something will come, something better will happen for me. Yet others are making it in this particular or prevailing times. Or someone say, no, maybe if I was born in a better family, I would have been much better. But people are making it from the poorest of the poorest. I actually like to say, you don't have to have been born in a certain family for you to become anything. You just needed to have been born. From there, you can figure out how you become, because even if you read the stories of people that have become great, some people come from backgrounds where it was impossible for them to become anything. But through persistence and consistent, what I like to call the compounding effect of consistency, they became what they became. So for me, that keeps pushing me. If someone says no to me, I shouldn't hold anything against them because they have refused to help me. Maybe they don't understand what I'm trying to do. So it is my responsibility to keep pushing and to keep moving. If I fail, it is okay to fail. But I have to keep moving. I can't afford to give up on myself. So that keeps on reminding me every day that I have a responsibility to be true to myself and to achieve something for myself at the bare minimum. There's actually a tendency to think that life begins when you grow up or when you grow old. And I'm using that in quotes because my second book actually is titled Life Doesn't Begin at 40, and it was forwarded by Chibamba Kanyama. One of the things that I actually talk about in there is that some people think, the young people, the average of the young people think that before I get to the age of 40 or before I get to the age of 35, I can play around. Then when I get to the age of maybe 36, 37 to 40, then I can now become serious with my life. And because of that, many young people have ended up reaching at the age of 40 and they can't be serious because right now life is happening. Whether you are 20 or 30 or 14 or 20 or 25 or at any age that you are, life is happening. And we're not rehearsing so that we live later. We're already living. And what if you don't live to be 40, to be 30? What if you die at 25? Should you say, well, I never lived because I never got to a certain age like other people like that got to the ages of 70? No. Even if you died at the age of 20, you give an account for those years. If you died at the age of 10, whatever consciously you were able to do at that particular age, you will give an account. So, young. Dr. Kenneth Kaunda knew at that very early stage that for us to be independent, we need to take certain radical decisions. At some point, he was even arrested for his radicalism. And at another point, there were other people, like I said, that had gone ahead of him. But because of how he understood that if we do not take radical decisions and if we do not forge our war properly, we will be able to continue fighting for years without winning. And because of that, he had to depart from those that had gone earlier for him to take a certain approach, which now saw to us being independent as a country and him being the president. But one other thing that separated Kenneth Kaunda from everyone is that he did not look at himself as a youth per se. He looked at himself as an agent of change. And regardless of him being a youth, he says, I can bring change to this nation. He was a teacher. But even as a teacher, he was frustrated by what was going on. And because of that, he says, well, I mean, he would have decided to just remain as a teacher. Me, I'm just a teacher. I am not a politician. At that point, maybe you'd expect the average of the youth to think that politicians, maybe, you have to go to a school to learn politics. So as a teacher, you don't even engage yourself in politics. But him as a teacher, he says, no, there's something I can do for my country. Dr. Kenneth Kaunda and the young people of his influence at that particular point, they were not asking, what can Zambia do for us? They were asking, what can we do for Zambia? And when they established that this is what they could do for Zambia, they launched into action. And even if it took them to prison and released afterwards, they still never changed their focus. And that, for me, forms as the cream for the young people that time. They were focused, they knew what they wanted, and they were ready to die for it. So one of the things that is very prime when you're talking about being focused is the reality that being focused doesn't mean you will not be knocked down. Many people think when they say be focused, then it means there's nothing wrong that can go in your focusedness. And I'm using those words very deliberately. Being focused could actually mean that failing several times, but you keep rising and keep maintaining your sight to where you want to go. Now, how do you become focused? You have to set where you are going. Many people today, and many young people especially, think that one day we will just wake up and we are leaders. As we are told, we are future leaders, or we are the leaders of tomorrow, or imiti kula empanga. So we think at one point we are going to reach at a point where all of a sudden it just dawns on us, or say, oh, now I'm a leader. And sometimes I like to say that in my tradition in Tonga, they say, inyiga ikala balama lezu, to imply that those that have beards are the only ones that inherit the land. So what they used to mean by that is that when you grow old, then you can now become a certain things that you could not become before you get older. And now, because of that, many of our grandfathers wasted their young ages and waited for them to become old, to have beards. And when they had beards and they are older now, they thought opportunities were going to be waiting for them, with stretched arms. Whilst at the same time, there were other people of their same ages that decided to, started to take meaningful decisions at that particular point. And today, the people that follow them, or their grandchildren, or their great-great-grandchildren, are living well. It is said that there's one person who was trying to mock another person here within Lusaka. I think it's a well-known story. Someone was saying, I was laughing at this person because they were driving a car that used to be their parents' car. And then this person was mocking this person who was driving a car to say, I'm not like you who drives an inherited car. And the person who was driving the inherited car says, it's good for me that I had my parents that worked hard and they left things for me to inherit. But sad for you that you had to start from scratch and will never be at the same level, because me, I had where to start from. And because of that, I'll always be at an advantage. That is very true. One of the things that they thank Dr. Kenneth Kaunda was that he made education free for them. Others, they just know that I just went to school as a person. I found books there, I found uniforms there, and because of that, history always puts KK at a place where he can never be erased. And that's how now you begin to cultivate a spirit of focus. You look at what other people could benefit from your actions. You stop being selfish, because if we're just going to work for ourselves, we can do that. But life is larger than just one individual. And that's why even when you fail, you're not just looking at an individual. You're looking at other people that could be benefiting from you. Do they have the right to benefit from you? Yes, they do. Why? Because even for us, the things that we benefit, even if we don't agree, we have benefited from people that sacrificed themselves, that even didn't think or know that we were going to exist. So as young people, I would encourage them to set a path. If, for example, you're not yet married, you say, okay, one day I want to marry as a young person, as a young man. So now you set to say, the kind of a person I want to marry is like this and like this. So in your quest to that particular reality, if you find a person who is not like what you want to marry, you're not going to, to waste your time and waste their time, because your path is already set on the kind of a person that you marry. I'm a married man myself. And one thing that I did before I married is I wrote down the things that I would want my wife to have. There are over 10 things. Does she tick on all of them? No. But she ticks on more than 7. And for me, that was satisfactory. So anyone else who did not tick on more than those things that I wrote there, I did not want to waste their time. And that kept my focus, and I avoided a lot of other things which could have crippled me. Another thing that can help us focus is sometimes look at your background. And at least if you can't do it for a lot of other people, at least do it for the sake of the background where you come from. At least say, I want my young brother, or I want my parents to know that at least they spent the 9 months which were worth the spend. This is what I like to say. We cannot judge you based on your background. But if you decide to remain the same for the rest of your life, then we'll blame you. You can't continue crying that, no, for me, if I was born in a better background, I would have made, better choices, or I would have been at a better place. No. Your background is just your background. You don't go to it all the time. History has always demonstrated that sometimes out of frustration, wanting to make things better, that is how we maintain our focus. To say, I do not want to end up like how I was, in the background that I was born in. Or, you say things like, at least if there's no one that went to the university in my family, I want to be the first one. And now that keeps you focused. Even when you're at your primary level, your school level, you are able to remain focused in that line because you want to, to set a record. I like to say that some of us come from backgrounds where the only record that we had is that my mother went up to grade 4. And so if I was, I was someone who was not serious, I would say, okay, by the time I reached grade 5, I would have stopped school to say, I've broken the record. Because I would have been the most educated within that confine. But the story was not always just breaking the record. It was to set a new path. It was to dare myself, is this how far I could go? Is this how far I could go? I have achieved things that no one in my family has achieved. But is this for my glory? No. It is for my family members to know that, come on, it is possible. I remember when I was writing my first book, one of my uncles told me that, because I had gone to ask for him for money to publish a book. And all I was asking for was a 500 kwacha. Did he have the money? Yes, because he works for a company that pays, by minimum understanding, I know he has the money. And he was not going, he says, I'm not going to give you the money, not because I don't have the money, but because I have seen more moons than you have, I have seen more harvests than you have, I'm way older than you. No one in our family has ever published a book, and you can't be the first one. He told me that to my face. Now, what was I supposed to do? Should I break down and say, well, my uncle has said that, so that's how my life can go? But you see, I was determined to set a path for those that are coming behind me. So I sold my phone. And I had a phone that was worth 1,000. So I sold it. I got the 500 that I needed. And with the remaining money, I bought like a small phone. I wasn't going to die because I wasn't on Facebook anymore. And then I published the first 12 copies. And I sold them. And again, I printed, I sold, to a point that now my uncle was surprised that, where could you have learned this? Because we don't have this in our family. But we forget that my background is just my background. I can't be determined by that. And so my focus has always been shaped in that particular light, that what I'm born, what I'm called for is larger than just background. And because of that, it shapes my decisions, and I remain focused in that particular light. So, should I have hated my uncle? No. For him, that's his understanding was, if there was any way our family could have written, or we could have emerged from a family that write books, my uncles would have been the ones to do it because they were older than me. So I couldn't have been the one, a young person, younger than even some of their children. I couldn't have been the one to be the first one to do it. But I just became the first one. And now they believe. Now my nephews and nieces, my uncle's daughters and sons, they think and they believe it is possible to be on TV, it is possible to write books, because they have seen it from me. Life is not starting at any later stage than it is already. It's already happening. And if you die before you become what you were born to be, you have not died. You've just been killed. And if you have been killed, you'll have an account for the things that you did not do which you were supposed to do. Otherwise, my grandfather's name is Monga and my name is Olly.